Hello, listeners. The clock may be up on the 24-25 season, and we're out on our sunbeds, but we've still got loads to talk about today. Summer silly season is well underway, and we're going to talk about how we've been filling our time whilst we wait for the football to come back. And of course, all the latest transfer talk, Wirtz, Sesko, and the endless rumour mill that gives us enough dopamine to keep refreshing Twitter until 2 a.m. But first, a bit of explanation to eagle-eared listeners may be wondering why the Double Pivot podcast has become the goal difference. And Lola, the answer is that we think it's a much better encapsulation of the spirit of our podcast. That's very diplomatic of you and has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it turned out there was already a podcast called The Double Pivot, something you were supposed to check, weren't you, Scarlett? Oh, it's all my fault, was it? Anyway, Goal Difference is a much better name because it explains exactly what we're about. See, I'm Scarlett, a passionate Arsenal fan. And I'm Lola, a lifelong Liverpool fan. And we're also identical twins, aren't we, Lola? Which means we've been disagreeing about football pretty much since birth. But don't worry, this won't be half an hour of bickering, although there will be some of that. But, once the microphones are rolling, it's all professional here. And each week, we'll bring you a mix of passionate hot takes, niche football culture, mildly eccentric analysis, and the odd tactical insight that actually makes sense. So whether it's the biggest game of the weekend or the weirdest story on football Twitter, we're here to break it down, argue it out, and get to the issues that other football podcasts can't. This is the Goal Difference, and with the words of Fabrizio Romano, here we go. I think it's like, here we go. Yeah. Time you spent scrolling on Twitter, Scarlett? Too much. Me too. My thumbs actually started to get quite painful, and I have to start scrolling with my index finger. I was waiting for a friend today who was unexpectedly late and found myself deep in Hand of Arsenal. Don't even know what that is. I was trying to split hairs on whether I think Zubimendi is coming or not. I'll save you some time. He's not. Okay. Well, according to Fabrizio, he is. So what does Fabrizio know? That's topic for another episode. Anyway, let's talk about the two big targets linked with Arsenal and Liverpool, and the name that's certainly been on my lips for 3 weeks for a saga that wasn't supposed to be very long is Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz. I could spend hours waxing lyrical about how excited I am and what a wonderful player I think he is, but I'm going to leave that to the experts. I think he could be a game changer. What do you think, Scarlett? Well, I think you mentioned to me that his hexagon, neither of us know what the hexagons are called, which is probably bad for two girls on a football podcast. But anyway, his stats bomb shape looked very similar to... It's called a map. Looked very similar to Firmino's. And in kind of Arsenal discussion about Liverpool transfers, the conversation has been, will Wirtz be an 8? Will he be off the left but kind of operating in the pockets? Or will he be a Roberto Firmino type, which you kind of suggested, according to those images, that he was very similar to? So to go backwards a bit, I think hearing about Wirtz early in the window, off the back of Liverpool having won the title with a very, very handy attack, I think it's fair to say, it was a little bit devastating. He is probably the highest caliber player who will move this window. You're right. I paid the £2.49 pay-per-view to watch him, and I kind of talked myself into thinking that I would curse it. And then my partner actually commented about 5 minutes in, he hasn't even had a touch. Next thing we knew, he jinks inside, plays a perfect ball to the back post, and Germany very nearly score. I have also seen footage of him just losing control of the ball on a dribble and it going out. Well, there's been a lot of footage bandied around on social media of lots of transfer targets. I mean, there's now internet beef between Cherky and Wirtz supporters, and people are calling Wirtz SpongeBob Squirts Pants. Ooh. There's all sorts of terrible names. I do think, though, apart from being slightly concerned about the business you're doing offensively, I still think Liverpool need a 6. We don't. Okay, well, you seem to think so last summer. Anyway, that's not the main point I was going to make. The main point I was going to make is clearly people believe that Cherky is absolute quality, and City seem to be getting him for somewhere approaching 40 mil, and you're dropping 130 on Wirtz. Well, from what I've heard about Cherky, and I do actually have an inside track on this, I spoke to a French football expert about this, and he said he'd been watching Cherky for 5 years and has been, ridiculously excited about his progress. But Cherky did make his debut 5 years, or maybe not 5 years ago, but a long time ago for the first team for Lyon, and has been very quiet since. And I hesitate to, draw too many parallels between players that might be different, but Dimitri Payet does spring to mind as a maverick playmaker from Ligue 1.
That's interesting because I saw a silly season compilation being like Nabil Fekir walked so Ryan Cherky could run, and I was like, is it just because they're like vaguely North African and play for Lyon and they're kind of small? Because like
And fat.
Fekir's left-footed, Cherky's right, isn't he? Although he like plays off both feet. Anyway, I think to get to kind of reapproach your question in a rambling way, what do I think of your business? I think from an Arsenal perspective, very worrying to see Liverpool strengthening in attack. But ultimately, do I still think the flaws in their team that were there last year are there this year? That will be there next year, yes.
I don't think we need the thing about us needing a six, though. Like that, did you not see Ryan Gravenberch put in a phenomenal season?
But who else do you have? Are you really thinking you're going to spend another season just being able to play your first 11 over and over?
I think Szoboszlai is going to start dropping back into that position.
And then to kind of conclude, this is a kind of summary of a conversation I heard on Arsenal Vision's kind of Transfer Digest. But they suggested that basically, if Wirtz plays in this Firmino role, 100% Salah's going to get a million chances. It'll be scary. But, Salah still has to take those and still has to have his Ballon d'Or level form, which he probably won't get.
He doesn't, though, because...
But in order for the title race to be a 90 pointer, if that doesn't quite work out for some reason because Van Dijk is not at the level he once was, because Salah isn't, if any of them don't reach that peak, then it's likely to be more of a kind of low 80s point title race.
I actually think you're looking in the wrong place, Scarlett, at our transfer business, because sure, Wirtz is the transformational signing. There's no doubt about that. We've only spent over £60 million 4 times in the club's history. So we don't do this often, and he is going to be a transformational player. But look no further than the fullback positions. I adore Andy Robertson and I would go to war for him, but there were points this season where, as someone who works in horse racing and sees horses unfortunately die on the race course, they put up screens for modesty around the horse before they put it down. And at times I was thinking, get the screens up for Robbo. Like, I love the man. Watching him play last season was difficult. So we're going to make huge improvements.
And from my perspective, Kirkes and Frimpong both seem handy, but that's all. They haven't made that elite step yet.
Kirkes was unbelievable last season.
Yeah, he had a great season for Bournemouth, but he had one great season. Like and Frimpong, he won the league with Leverkusen. There's that iconic picture of the crowd coming on the pitch when he scores, right? I think.
No, that Wirtz scored, but there's him in the pitch invasion afterwards.
Okay. So yeah, I think the jury's out a little bit. And also, I guess I kind of feel that that's quite a lot of construction to put your team under, to have 2 wings where you're going to be replacing a fundamental part of your team.
Can I put one thing to you, though? When we came up against PSG over 2 legs, admittedly, they did batter us in France, and we were lucky to come out with a 1-0 win, although we have quality players, so it's not crazy that it happened.
Harvey Elliott, who scored,
he is quality. He is quality. He's just not quite good enough. But anyway, at Anfield, we pretty much matched them punch for punch. But what they had that we didn't have is that explosive pace and dynamism. And we don't have a lot of that. And what Slot, I think, is signalling in the transfers that he's trying to make, Kirkes, Frimpong, Wirtz, is shifting towards this pacey athleticism, all the stuff that you said about us building on our strengths and relying on Mo having a Ballon d'Or season and the solidity of Van Dijk, I actually think what you're missing is Slot is signposting to the rest of the league. I won the league comfortably with this group of players, but there's one thing that I really think I can turn up about them, and that is the pace and dynamism, and that is what he's doing in the market.
Well, I think more interestingly, what I would say about the Wirtz signing, if he is to play in this kind of false 9 role, is that the world is turning to diminutive false 9s and Arsenal are signing a giant. So I think that's a kind of interesting way to approach the Sesko conversation.
Okay, so yeah, you've said his name. Is it Sesko, Sheshko, Sexo?
How many times are you going to do that bit?
So you obviously want to talk about him. Tell me, how are you feeling about landing on Sesko in this game of striker roulette that's been going on in this transfer window?
Well, I think we've had variations of this conversation before, and basically the tension in the Arsenal fan base is quote unquote, between success now in the form of apparently Victor Gyökeres, who's played at the top level for 2 years,
Who, as of today, looks like
he's going to United, has an unbelievable goal scoring record, and Sexo, Sheshko, who has also been at Leipzig for 2 seasons, having done well at Salzburg, is, I think, 22, and, obviously has far inferior goal scoring stats, but who people seem to think has all of the attributes to become one of the best players in the world. And I heard today that his top speed, or his sprint speed, was the same as Mbappe's, however you calculate that. That's unbelievable. So I think, for Arsenal, he kind of looks like Havertz in a way. He's the big striker. I imagine with that pace, and without having watched much of him, I have to say, there's going to be some running in behind, which will be good. But I think ultimately my feeling is, when you go back to the Isak signing, Arsenal were kind of umming and ahhing about a 60 million figure then. How was it, 3-4 years ago now? And, I understand why they didn't pull the trigger, because I don't think his goal scoring record was not great. I don't think anyone necessarily could have told from that record that he was going to explode in the way he did. And with Isak off the table, I think you've got to back that person. I think the striker market, as we've discussed, is not brilliant in terms of, I'm not sure there's many people except Isak who you could guarantee, and maybe you could guarantee Ollie Watkins in a different way.
Well, Al Hilal might be about to spend pretty much what we spent buying Darwin Núñez off us. And I mean, the Saudi clubs have massively shaken up the picture, and Osimhen looked like he was off to Al Hilal. That's not happening now. I mean, there's no doubt for me that probably on the market right now, Isak aside, Osimhen is the best player.
That's interesting. I can't really speak to Osimhen's quality because I've not watched him enough, but I'm sure he's good.
You've alluded to something which we've talked about before, which is the question is, Arsenal fans, and to you specifically, are you getting the best of a bad bunch with Sesko?
Well, but I think to tip that on its head a bit, Arsenal have been looking at Sesko for years. People seem to generally be convinced that this guy has a really high ceiling. They use.
So why are Chelsea not trying to get him?
Well, I think they are, but Arsenal are in pole position. I think the maybe more the interesting person to put Sesko next to is Ekitike, who's had an unbelievable season.
I think it's Ekitike. I could be wrong, but I think
Chelsea were kind of being quoted 100 million for. Yeah. But my feeling about Sesko is, no, it's not the best of a bad bunch, because it's basically saying what we want is brilliant. And no, he's not brilliant right now. He's pretty good. But I don't think Arsenal need brilliant right now. I think Arsenal need good. I think Arsenal need 15 goals probably from a striker and 15 goals from a left-sided attacker. I don't think the problems in our team are fundamental. So I think from an Arsenal perspective, I'm still hoping that we'll see Zubimendi. I think we'll see Sesko. And I think it's looking likely that we're going to go after Rodrigo, which is a really intriguing situation. And if those transfers happen, including Kepa, who, by the way, I think is not a sexy transfer, but is not a sexo transfer. But I think that's pretty smart business, considering we were going to pay 30 million for Joan Garcia. I couldn't complain about the summer we'd have if we did that business. So what do you think of that? How does that make Liverpool fans feel?
Look, football is not a game won and lost on paper, but if you're just looking at Sesko's stats for this season, I'm assuming this is in the Bundesliga. It could be all competitions, but I think this is just Bundesliga. 13 goals from 9.89 expected goals, 2 penalties, and I think for a striker you should knock that off the total. So 2 non-penalty goals. So he's had 11 normal goals, 31 shots on target, 68 shots. Leipzig admittedly had a terrible year by their standards, but those numbers are not jumping off the page at me. And, the XG differential, that's not a bad one. I've seen much worse ones, like Cunha outperforming his XG by something ridiculous like 7 goals, which is just unsustainable. That's not unsustainable, 9.89 to 13 goals. Shows there's room for improvement, but that's fine. That's good. That's a sign of clinical finishing to just outperform your XG. So with Sesko, it's obvious you're not getting the finished article. He might well explode when he gets to the Premier League, but that is not the signing that for me moves the needle and makes me think, oh my God, here come Arsenal. The name you just mentioned, Rodrigo, if you were to sign a Rodrigo or a Nico Williams, that would make me feel a lot more nervous. because, I like Havertz. I think Havertz is a good player. I think he got, was it 12 Premier League goals this season?
No, he wasn't in double figures. No one was in double figures.
So look, Havertz is not bad. His movement is good. His build-up play is good. There's a lot to like about Kai Havertz. So for me, who knows what will happen with Sesko, but that is not a game-changing signing for me. I could well be wrong. Rodrigo, on the other hand, that worries me because Martinelli, who has a real penchant for turning it on against Liverpool, in particular Trent, who you won't have the opportunity to do that to this season, or next season. Who knows even where we are. But
Club World Cup season. 1.5 season.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. For me, the improvement for Arsenal really, really comes on that flank in place of Martinelli. That's the ruthless thing for Arsenal to do, in my opinion, would be to really kick on from Martinelli and Odegaard and sign game changers in those positions.
I think we'll leave Odegaard for another year, but definitely, from my perspective, that competition who would potentially raise Martinelli's level and also provide some more attacking impetus on the left side and some more kind of thoughtfulness around the box. I think that would be pretty devastating for Arsenal. But love Kai Havertz, and especially with his new physique, I'm very excited to see what happens next season. And I think he'll start
You
a lot
sound
of
like
games.
a typical girl.
But let's move on, because the question I have to ask you in this silliest of silly seasons, what's the silliest thing you've done or witnessed?
The silliest stuff I've witnessed is definitely all the rubbish on Twitter about Wirtz and Sesko. When I first saw it, I thought it was a joke because I was like, how are people sitting there hate watching players that haven't actually even signed for Liverpool or City yet? And of course, how quickly the narrative has changed among City fans who were rejected by Wirtz and are now saying they wanted Cherky all along. So that's the silliest thing I've seen. The silliest thing I've done is probably walking past the Emirates on Saturday night, deliberately going out of my way just to hear Robbie Williams singing Angels. And you were there too, and it was quite brilliant, wasn't it?
I've got to say, I'm not a Robbie Williams fan, but the atmosphere in the Emirates was great.
It was the loudest I've ever heard it. And I'm not even saying that to wind you up. I could hear it. I was washing up in the kitchen, and that's the wrong side of the house for the Emirates. And I just heard screams, and it was pouring down with rain. So people were really going for it.
I do think people who don't like football, like, I can see why. I think the concert thing and the like collective expression, moment of emotion thing definitely spoke to me in the way that an Arsenal game does.
Communal joy.
Communal joy.
To round off today, as we always do, we're going to play, drum roll, top of the tops. Scarlett, what top are you wearing today and why?
So I'm wearing the navy blue with yellow writing or gold writing, Dreamcast away kit, the third kit from the 2001 season. And Arsenal fans will know that was the year we lifted the Premier League after coming second 3 years in a row, after our double winning 1998. So, of course, you and I, Lola, were 3 years old.
Do you have any bridesmaid duties this summer, out of interest?
That's so lame. But I think it's interesting, right? And I seen a Martin Keown quote flying about on the Arsenal social media ether about what it takes to have come second 3 times in a row to then be the winner. And he said that it was a special group, but also it took a serious mindset shift. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how we come out next season. I think there's quite a lot of stuff up in the air. I'm really curious. I mean, I'm not curious at all about the Club World Cup, let's be clear. But I wonder how that will affect those teams.
Yeah, let's do an episode about it. Because it's going to be chaos. I think listening to Saka's comments prior to the England game, which is either tonight or tomorrow.
And oh my God, give the England team a moment. They just look knackered.
Yeah, exactly. But someone said, what are you going to do after this game? And he was like, go on holiday. And this is coming from a guy he went to Dubai, I think, for warm weather rehab. So he's not even done the whole season. But yeah, it's depressing. It really is depressing, and it's degrading the quality of the product that we got to watch.
The money on the line is significant. And if City go to jail, they might need that money.
Well, listen, stay tuned. We're definitely going to do a Club World Cup special. And I am wearing a Bayern Munich training top. Bought it a few years ago. Adidas do make very cool training wear.
I don't know. It's the Adidas logo without the writing, which always irks me.
Mine has the writing. It's old.
Damn it.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Adidas starting their deal with Liverpool on August the 1st. So we're having to introduce signings in the night kit, which feels really weird. Frimpong is announcing himself as a Liverpool player in a kit he'll never wear.
But you're wearing the Bayern kit because Wirtz rejected Bayern. Right.
Yeah. Listeners, we're going to leave it there for this week. We will see you again next week, and we will definitely do a Club World Cup special. Definitely. See you on the airwaves, listeners. Bye, listeners. Bye.